Works wonders.
There. Cool. Oh, it's windy here. So I get it, Jenny.
Yeah, I worry about the wind in my hair from time to time too. Heather, do we know, other than Bob Schmidt, who was questionable tonight, maybe?
Um,
Uh,
so we have quorum. We're just waiting on John Jack and Mariah Coots, and I haven't heard. Oh, it looks like Mariah's connecting. I haven't heard from John, so we could start at any time, Bob. We're at 6 o'clock now.
okay, well, recognizing that it is 6 o'clock, I will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Um, and I think the only individual that is on the traditional lands of the Hawaiian would be Christine. And that's where the bulk of course, our discussions revolve around, and how much we appreciate the Hawaiian nation sharing their beautiful land and bounty with us, and the rest of us are from a number of other nations that we are um, uh, appreciate being on their territories as well. I would like to make a notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to you on YouTube and on the regional district website. And we'll start off with introductions. Oh, I'm glad to see Bob has joined us as well. Good evening, Bob. So I'll start off, and then I will call you out to make your introduction as I see you on the screen. My name is Bob Beckett. I'm the Area A Regional Director as part of the ACRD, and I have the pleasure to be your chairperson for this committee and tonight's meeting. And I'll start with John Mass, please.
Hi, everybody. John Mass from Bamfield. I was on the water board before this board, and now I've agreed to be on this board for a little longer. I think everybody knows me.
Thanks, John. And Lisa, please.
Hello, I'm Lisa Bai, and I too was a member of the water board prior to being accepted onto this board, and am still a resident of Bamfield, at least on a part-time basis at the moment. I am also currently in the Tashat territory because I am in Port Alberni working on a house that I own here that needs some renovations.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for acknowledging that you are on the traditional territories of the Dashot Nation. Christine, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Gruman, and I live in Bamfield in the west side. There's the Trevor Channel and Deer Group behind me, which is Huayet territory, but also shared Uchuckwusit territory out in those islands, which we don't talk about that often here, but it's true. And we're right there. We spend a lot of time there. I work with the Huayet First Nations in their Lands and Resources Department. And in my personal life, I'm a avid community volunteer with our community school association and other initiatives. So happy to be here and happy to have a second meeting. And this is Milo, who's the only baby who lives on the west side full time.
Thanks, Christine, for all you do. And hello, Milo. Good to see you again. We'll go to Bob Schmidt.
Good evening, everybody. I apologize for being a little late. I'm actually surprised I'm here. I just got back from Nanaimo literally about like 1 minute ago. So glad I can make this meeting. I'm a full-time resident of Bamfield, Bob's alternate director for the ACRD board, and I'm also on the community affairs board as well.
Thank you, Bob. And Director Coots.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Ufklama Mariah Coots. I am the Uchuckalset representative for the ACRD, and I am currently in Port Alberni, so I am on the traditional territories of the Sashat and Hupachuset. And thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much, Moira. And Heather.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
And Paul.
Hi, everybody. Paula Weichelberger, Solid Waste Manager.
And Jenny.
Good evening, Jenny Brunn, General Manager of Community Services with the ACRD.
And Eddie.
Hi, everybody. Eddie Kunderman, Operations Manager with the ACRD.
And Michael.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael McGregor, Lands and Resources Coordinator with the ACRD.
Great to see so many staff supporting us this evening. Thank you for your participation tonight. And we'll be introducing Mandy Ross in just a few moments as we move through the agenda. So welcome, everyone, on this beautiful evening. If I could, under item number 2, get a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Bob, I just wondered if I could add a late item.
Absolutely.
Potentially under just item 9, late business. I was wondering if the committee would be open to having a discussion on changing the next committee meeting date.
So we need a motion to add that to the agenda. Could I have someone make that motion, please? Christine makes the motion and it's seconded by Bob Schmidt. All those in favor, raise their hand, please. That passes. Thank you very much. So I'm sorry, Heather, what was that? 9?
Just item 9, 9A.
9. Okay, thank you. So with the addition of 9A, late business, can I have approval of the revised agenda, please? And that's moved by John Mass and seconded by Lisa Bai. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. Any declarations, any conflicts of interest on any of these matters this evening? Thank you. Seeing none, we will go to the minutes of the Bamfield Area Services Committee meeting held on January 23rd, 2024. Any comments or questions about the minutes? I have one question, and I think I'm looking to get clarification with respect to the vice chair position. Heather, do you want to speak to that, or?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when we did the election last meeting, Bob Beckett was declared chair. Mariah Coots wasn't interested in being the vice chair at this point. So I did engage with John Jack, and he is willing to be vice chair. So I didn't add that to the minutes because we didn't discuss that at the meeting, but John is willing to be vice chair. So I can make a note of that in today's minutes.
Thank you. And just for clarification, because I was under the impression that Moira was reluctantly suggesting that she wasn't perhaps looking to be vice chair, but she had that infectious smile that suggested to me that if we were stuck, that she would step up very graciously. Do we need to have an election at this point in time, Heather, or what's the status?
Yeah, I'm just opening up the terms of reference because I believe it says the chair and vice chair has to be one of the ACRD directors from Hooay at Uchuckalset and Bamfield. So, I mean, if Director Coots, if you've changed your mind, please let me know. Otherwise, we don't need to do anything.
I'm completely comfortable with John Jack being chair. But my only concern was I just don't really have, in my opinion, feeling enough, having enough meetings under my belt to successfully chair a meeting. That was my only concern. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And I must say, since we've been working together on the ACRD board, you are more than qualified. And perhaps that at the next annual meeting, when we go through elections again, perhaps you'll be more comfortable putting your name forward. Because I certainly, while I enjoy working with John Jack, I would equally enjoy working with you as well moving forward. That being the case, then, Heather, we're good then to have the minutes of this meeting reflect that John Jack is the vice chair then.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Thank you very much. We're going to move forward now to item 5A, and that's a presentation. And I know Mandy, who we're so fortunate to have in Bamfield, supporting the Bear Aware program and all the good work that you do. Always look forward to your reports and recommendations for our community. And I'll turn it over to Mandy. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Bob. I'm a little challenged in the screen share department. I couldn't get it working yesterday, so I'm going to give it another shot. Yeah, but I think somebody else has my PowerPoint on file if it doesn't work. No, there's something funky with my computer here. Or me.
Do you want me to bring it up, Paulo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
thanks.
Let me see if I can do it, Mandy. Could somebody let me know if they can see it?
Perfect.
There we go. So just a little bit of background. I started the Bear Aware program about 10 years ago, and 3 years ago, I moved over and was working with WildSafe BC. But because Bamfield is such a specific place, I thought it would be easier to go back to working individually, and so I could streamline the program. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this year was the first year back as a individual with a separate program, but I'm still working and collaborating with WildSafe BC. They're an amazing organization, and so there's everything's the same, same coordinator, just less paperwork. Next slide, please. So I'll just briefly go over the wildlife activity, the main causes of human-wildlife conflict, outreach efforts and challenges, and the focus for this year. So this is just a summary of what happened last year. Next slide, please. It was a really good year last year. There's very little conflict. Very few issues reported to the conservation services, but usually that means very little because most people in Bamfield don't call the COS when there's an issue, unfortunately. But there were 8 bear issues reported and 1 cougar sighting, which actually was probably for once reflective of what was going on in the town. There was no cougar conflict this year. And the bear issues were kind of inverse the way they normally are. We had bear issues at the beginning of the year rather than just before hibernation. So in about March, bears started getting into the bins, the public bins. And this is probably because the bears that had issues last year woke up and went straight back to where they were getting food sources the year before. There were a couple of incidences in June and July, and then pretty much everything fell off and was quiet in August and September, which was amazing. And it was a very good bear year. So that's probably contributed to it keeping the bears in the forest. Next slide, please. So the main causes of human bear conflict in Bamfield. Number one is the public garbage bins. So this is an ongoing issue. A lot of them were not bear resistant, many of them broken, and many of them are not user friendly. So this was a picture of a bin near the office in Anakla. And this looks like a bear bin. It's got the lids, but it's not a user-friendly bin because you have to actually in order to access the yellow lids, you have to lift up the bar and secure it with a carabiner. And where things line up with a carabiner, it's really difficult to do. So this is a sort of a challenge when things aren't like super user-friendly, when there are a lot of people using it. Because they just don't get put back on. And other causes were people storing attractants in non-bear resistant outbuildings. So we had somebody leaving prawn bait in a shed. And what we did was set a temporary electric fence up around it, which was great. The bear never came back. So not only did it not have access to the food, it got a nice shock and was gone. So that could have ended up being a really big issue in the middle of town in the middle of summer, but nothing happened. Nothing came of it, which was great. We also had coolers and freezers broken into, and then fish refuge and compost in the intertidal. Next slide, please. So the outreach efforts that I made last year were brochure distribution to lodges, and in-person meetings with people. So going to people's properties, doing bear hazard assessments on their properties, letting them know where issues were and what they could do to mitigate those issues. Bamfield corkboard posts, monitoring public bins. I spent a lot of time going over to the east side to make sure that the bins were locked, which is a challenge. Outreach to the campsite programs and trying to get more people to comply with the bear campsite program, and the cost share program. Next slide, please. The cost share program is funded by the Bamfield Community Affairs Grants and Aid. And what we do is we encourage people to purchase bear resistant products like bins, composters, or electric fencing, and we can pay up to half of the price of the product, or up to $250. Last year, grant for $500 allowed people to purchase 1 composter and 3 bins. And they were in areas where I've been trying to get people to do those. So they're high risk areas. So I was thrilled when these people purchased them. So that was awesome. And we also got signs. These are temporary signs that go up when there's an issue in town. And we didn't have to use them, which was awesome. Next slide, please. So the main challenges that I found last year, again, the bins, trying to make sure that they're all user friendly, and monitoring them. A lot of people don't lock them. So this year I'm hoping to try and get more people monitoring these bins. The transfer station, we have a great electric fence up there now, but it's not very helpful when the gate is left wide open for bears to just wander through. So the gate is, I'm not on the east side, but the number of times that when I was over there that the gate was actually left open is a little disconcerting. So if we could try and come up with some sort of automatic closing mechanism for the gate. Also, we had to fix the fence twice, because vehicles backed into the electric fence. So if there was a way of getting some sort of a curb to prevent cars from backing up into the fence, that would be great. Fish refuge and compost in the intertidal. This brings a lot of fish gets thrown in the intertidal and it gets washed back up, and it brings bears and cougars into town. And also we're seeing a lot of sea lions feeding off of the fish that accumulates there. So same rules apply for marine life. You don't want to allow them to become habituated because they become dangerous. And it's actually quite alarming watching these children standing on the edge of the dock with these massive sea lions right below them. So that's something I'm thinking of getting some sort of a signage up there, hopefully. And also we've got to try and encourage people to do something different with the fish waste. We did have a collision with a bear. A bear got hit by a car near Pachina. It wasn't on the new road, but it just makes me think that we are going to see more collisions with wildlife now that we have people driving faster on the road. So signage would actually be helpful, just to warn people to watch their speed and keep an eye out for wildlife. I think would be useful. Next slide, please. So focus for this year. Public garbage bins, continue to educate people, continue the outreach program, focusing on tractor management, working with dock owners, addressing the fish in the intertidal, continue the cost sharing program, continue working with local campsites, and educational signs. So that's that. Any questions?
Thank you, Mandy. Any questions, folks? Go ahead, Paula.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Mandy. That was a great report. And it highlighted a couple of key things. As you said, when we look at the bins, we're going through an RFP process where we're looking at more consistent bear-resistant bins, but there's definitely a need for that outreach piece so that the locks always have to come on. That's, I think, going to be a very repetitive sort of message. And yeah, no, overall, great report. It's been fantastic working with you, and we're looking forward to this coming year.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be great if we could somehow get people, I don't know, like if there are people in certain areas where there are the bins, maybe at Anakla, if management could, when they come through town and the bins are emptied, if they're, they could sort of set up somebody that would go around and just make sure that they're all locked. Because I think by having them locked at the beginning sets a tone. But unfortunately, a lot of the time they don't get locked, and then they just get left unlocked. So hopefully we can try and set something up with people in the areas.
So further to Paulo's comments regarding the new bins, which will only be ACRD, not ANACLA. Paula, are those bins going to be the type that Mandy is suggesting or advocating for? Something relatively user friendly, because you've got elderly folks, and we want to make it easy, and we don't want the bears to get in. Do you want to just speak to that for a second, Paul?
For sure. And thanks for that. Yeah, what we did go through with the RFP process, and we're going through a couple of specific contractors right now, is looking for a mix of those things. The out in the community one is tough. You do have your metal latched bins, much like you would see in campsites and all that sort of thing. So it is going to be a very similar style, because it's going to be a balance between accessing the bin as, easily as a member of the public, and also making sure that the bear doesn't actually flip up that latch, which we've seen that sort of thing happen in the past. There's going to be quite a balance in there to address that sort of thing there. It's something that will have to be monitored, but we're working closely with contractors to see what can be done.
Okay, thank you. My next question would be with respect to ANACLA and your recommendations, Mandy. How do you recommend staff that we approach ANACLA? Would that be through John Jack, through the minutes of this meeting? Go ahead, Jenny.
We have a unique situation. So I think actually, Bob, all of the bins that are in ANACLA, those would be included as part of our program. So even though it is ANACLA and we charge them for that service, because we went to this cost sharing method where Waste Management comes in, they service them all on behalf of ACRD, and then we sub-bill out those costs. I believe, and Paulo, correct me if I'm wrong, our intention was to replace all of the bins that Waste Management has, including the ones in ANACLA. The ACRD will cover those upfront costs, and then we will still sub-bill out the cost to HFN. So essentially, they won't see any difference in the field, but we will now have ACRD-owned bins, and they should all be standard and proof. That's accurate, Paulo?
Yep, that's bang on. Thanks, Jenny.
Does that include the park? Okay, great. Yeah, if you ever want any feedback on bin design, I got lots of it. So those burgundy bins that you see are a great design. So yeah.
If Mandy, if you don't mind firing that off to Paulo, I'd appreciate that. Just for reference, I'd appreciate that. I'm going to carry on with another question. I'm looking for thoughts and whether it's, you know, everyone who's in attendance tonight, or whether it's Mandy just elaborating a little bit. But when you bring up the organic waste in the you know, the tidal water or fish, you know, the organics, the potato peels, the banana, the apple cores, that's one thing that is relatively straightforward to from an educational point to say, hey, stop putting that in the water because that's attracting. But with all the lodges and all the docks, what do we do with the fish, the, you know, the carcasses? So I'm looking for some thoughts because I'm one of those guys that cleans my fish and watches the sea lions take them away.
Well, one of the things that I want to do is a proper assessment of the docks that exist, because there are a lot of docks that are really close to the shoreline, and they don't even stand a chance. And some docks is just a matter of putting the cleaning table on the other side, not on the inside. But obviously a lot of people don't want to have things on the inside because that's, you know, they want to be able to park their boats on the outside. I've seen some setups in a northern community where they had like a pipe, and they would sort of like tip it. So they'd you know, fire it and tip it across and, you know, send the stuff out. But again, this stuff is starting to accumulate and bring in, you know, sea lion. I mean, it's good if it can be further into the, you know, into the actual tidal moving water. But yeah, it's a challenge. Other communities have had like a floating dock cleaning station, which is out there, or you try to encourage people to do stuff on their boats. But it's like there's a lot of habits that have been established there, so it's a challenge. And also, and with composting, there's a lot of people are wanting to compost now, and people feel guilty throwing stuff in the garbage, and so they just throw it in the ocean. So having some sort of green waste would be preferable for sure. There's a lot of people that are interested in that.
And Jenny has, you know, approached me and had discussions with the community before. I think you'll be excited to know, Jenny, that at the last night's Bamfield Community Affairs meeting, there was a lot more discussion about recycling and what that would look like, and, you know, the organics. And, you know, Mandy, you know, addressed it last night in her presentation, that, you know, that diversion piece makes a huge difference, because the Lady Rose is struggling with the bins and trying to sort that out. So this is perfect time. I agree, Mandy, with respect to getting data. Data is important. You know, which docks are in shallow, which ones are not, and let's get that, and let's start talking about organics, not just letting folks know not to do it, but, you know, what's an alternative means for that. So great discussion. Anyone have any other questions or comments for Mandy? As always, oh, go ahead, John.
I thought you were going to say, as always, John wants to talk. But no, yeah, the sea lion thing, it really doesn't matter if the stuff's going into 30 feet of water. As a diver, I know what that looks like down there, and sometimes that pile of fish carcasses is 3 or 4 or 5 feet deep. Where at a place like off the fisheries dock where it gets dumped, it's rarely dumped in intertidal zone, and it really doesn't matter if it's dumped into 30 feet of water. The sea lions will be on it. Pretty much a big feeding station for them.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, the thing about like the fisheries dock is I have the sign saying dump past this point, and everyone does, and now there's food accumulating there. So it's like awesome that they're listening, but whoops. So there's something's got to change. Yeah.
Thanks, John. Christine, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Milo kind of has his hand up too, so we'll see how this works. I am really curious, it won't fit in this meeting, but to know more about what the organics diversions options are out here. I feel like there's pilots that are in closer to town, and I know anything to do with waste in Bamfield is more complex, but I would really like to know what can be done in that realm. We're not necessarily, I don't feel like managing a composter on my property, and would like to do the right thing with organics, but I'm curious about what options are for processing that out here, so we're not shipping all of that wet waste out of the community. And then with the fish piece, I really like this idea of getting the data about where there's accumulating salmon that is a problem, and trying to figure out a solution for how that can go back into the ocean, because those are all nutrients and organics that have been created in that ocean environment. And I do think that it's right for it to go back into the environment in that case. So figuring out the way to do that well is, I think, worthwhile to figure out.
Before I go to Lisa, I see that you have your hand up. Jenny, I'm going to go to the 30,000 foot mark in view. And I'm thinking that the timing is right for you to approach James Willock and the Bamfield Community Affairs Society to do a little presentation again on potential possibilities, some initiatives. So I'll give you a moment to speak about that, and then we'll turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Bob. And I do love hearing that the community is excited about recycling and organics diversion. And we are too. Just for everyone's information, we are working on the solid waste master plan right now. So that is a pretty comprehensive plan for the entire region, but then we look specifically at different areas, and Bamfield is one of them. So right now, some of the high level guiding principles are getting set, goals and targets, and then drilling into what are the details. What is the ACRD going to be focusing on for the next 5-10 years? And all of those initiatives, then we come up with the funding, we get this great master plan, and we go and implement. So we're still in early stages. And I think, Bob, that maybe that might be a really good presentation topic for community affairs, is actually talking about the solid waste management plan and then what that'll look like for Bamfield, because of course public engagement is a key component of that plan development, because we want to make sure that we are accurately matching solutions to the community. We've had some talk in the past, we have ideas, but things are always changing and there's always opportunities, and we really want to hear from Bamfield. So I'll take that away and discuss with Jody Frank, who is our projects coordinator, and see if she's able to come and do a presentation and update the community on what that looks like and how they can get involved.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenny. And over to Lisa.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to apologize for the lack of video. I'm fighting with an unstable internet connection, and it seems to stay healthier if I don't run the video as well. And I just wanted to put a comment out there regarding composting. I'm an avid composter myself, but I am also currently dealing with a massive rat situation. So when we start planning our compost, if that could really be taken into consideration in regards to placement of the community composters, etc., not wanting to bring rats into housing, if at all possible.
Thanks for that, Lisa. Good point.
That's the beauty of the bear-proof Jora composter, is the rats can't get in there.
Okay, well, thank you, Mandy, again for your presentation tonight and your passion for protecting the residents, and equally important, for protecting our beautiful wildlife. So we will move on then to, there is no correspondence for action or information. I'm going to move to item number 7, request for decision, Elaine Scott Centennial Park Pavilion. And Michael, are you going to lead us, start us off in this conversation?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think I will lead this conversation. Just let me find my place here. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm Lands and Resources Coordinator with the ACRD. Part of my role is to help out with Bamfield Park Services. And one of the items that we've been discussing for the last 18-ish months has been a proposal from Louis Drew. So I might not have said that correctly, but he's interested in replacing a covered picnic area pavilion in the Elaine Scott Centennial Park. And he's been driving the fundraising. He originally brought it to the Parks Commission, which he was a sitting member. I think it was just a little bit over a year ago. He brought it to the Parks Commission. I've heard verbally, I didn't get minutes from this meeting, but verbally I heard that the proposal was supported by the Parks Commission for him to, keep pursuing the project, begin fundraising, keep moving forward with his drawings. And then, so at that time, he contacted me. He showed me the drawings that he had. I asked him to create a project charter, which was attached underneath the report here. And that's just something to help us kind of flesh out the different facets of the project and, budget and risk and design and see if there's anything that needs a little bit more work. So after that, we were able to go back to him and say that the drawings weren't quite where they needed to be prior to a building permit. And he was able to go back and get those drawings to the standard that a building permit would require. And then also, I've had a number of conversations with him on the budget. So he lists that a $25,000 budget that he has raised, and he thinks that is suitable. I'm a little concerned whether that's going to get the structure done or not. He said that there's a verbal commitment from Elaine Scott's family to cover cost overruns for this structure. And I know volunteer labor and community projects are able to do, a lot with a little sometimes, but I know if this was an ACRD staff-led project, I'd be looking at that budget a little closer. And then the other risk that I see as staff here is, the Bamfield Parks Commission is in a transition period at the moment. So the new, we've lost a couple members, and the new Parks Commission is going to be establishing new levels of service, establishing new maintenance and asset replacement obligations and priorities as well. So, that's why the recommendation for this is that, we kick this over to the Bamfield Parks Commission for their next meeting to have, a renewed discussion on before, endorsing it for building permit at this time. And then at the end, there is an optional consideration and resolution there where, if you approve of the project and want to see it move forward, we can make that resolution to, endorse the building permit at the time. So I am happy to answer any questions people may have on that.
Thanks, Michael. I'm just wanting to understand the process here. What exactly are we being asked? Or did you say we're being asked to refer it to the board or the ACRD board? Or we're being asked to refer it to the Parks Commission?
So Louis has gotten the project and the drawings to a point where he'd like to apply for a building permit. And to apply for that permit, the ACRD board needs to direct our authorized signatures to sign the permit because it is on ACRD property. So that's his request. After reviewing the project plan and whatnot, the recommendation is that we ask the Bamfield Parks Commission to take a look and give us their recommendation. But then there's also the optional consideration, since it was approved just over 12 months ago, to recommend that the ACRD endorse the building permit.
Thanks for explaining that.
So just before I go to Bob, so for further clarification, from your perspective, Michael, the Parks Commission had, I'm trying to choose my words so that they're accurately reflective of the direction that they gave Louis, that they supported the project in principle versus passing a resolution to move forward with the project. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just wondering about that technical side of things.
Yeah, and I've had, a few verbal discussions on this. I have not seen any minutes from the meeting that it was approved, but my understanding is that it was passed conditionally, and the Parks Commission has, said that they're not dedicating Parks Commission funds to it, and he's responsible for fully funding the project through various ways. And Louis says that he believes he's fully funded the project. I think there's a little bit of a risk there. In that the funds are a little light, and so I think it has been conditionally approved by the Parks Commission. But then also with the transition of the Parks Commission that we're seeing this year, I don't see it hurting going back to discuss a little bit further at that group.
And then if I can just follow up with that, Michael, and I've got Bob, and then I've got John Mass. If this committee recommends it went back to the Parks Commission, and the Parks Commission formally endorsed it, then it would come back to our committee for one final review before going to the ACRD board. Is that correct?
That's the process I see. Yeah.
Good, thank you. I'll go to Bob Smith, and then I'll go to John Mass. Go ahead, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Maybe just for some context, and maybe not a fair question, Michael, what's the magnitude of the deficiency in the budget as you see it? And keeping in mind, obviously there's some uncertainty about volunteer, assistance and goods in kind and that kind of thing. But are we talking about like a few $1,000s, or are we talking like 5 or 10? Do you have any kind of a feel for context, how deficient the budget may be for that project?
Yeah, I'd say that I'd like to see maybe a $15,000 increase if I were the one managing the project. But again, I'm not connected to the Bamfield labor market as well as you all are. Maybe Louis is. So my understanding is that he's not a trained carpenter, so most of the work would have to be hired out, or there'd be volunteer hours in kind dedicated to this. I know he's got some materials donated at this time. Yeah, I think the risk is that it moves forward, and then project costs are greater than the estimated project, and hopefully ground hasn't broken by the time that occurs. Best case scenario is that it does get built within budget, and then there's the other considerations about operations and maintenance and asset retirement obligations that we have to deal with too. So it's adding another asset to that Parks Commission and the Park Service here that we're unsure it's going to be. Yeah.
I think that'd be a really good thing to flag for the Parks Board, because that's like 15,000 compared to 25. That's a 60% difference. And so just a quick second question: are you satisfied with the revised drawings and the design? Did they deal with the deficiencies or the concerns that you had, or are those still outstanding?
Yeah, I've gone over the new drawings with our building inspector, and we're satisfied with his updates there.
Okay, thank you.
On Mass, please.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Michael. I didn't have any questions per se, but I did do a little extra research. Starting right from the most newest, I guess this was agreed upon by the previous commission when the first funds started coming in, and the first funds started coming in unsolicited And then the project idea was brought forward after funds had already been raised. And the Parks Board agreed to take this on, or to have Louis take this on, and that the Parks Board would in fact contribute up to $5,000 that would be strictly used for groundwork, landscaping work. And some of this has already been used for the demolishing of the old buildings. So the maintenance side of things wouldn't be much difference because the old buildings were being maintained anyway. It's going to be a new building similar in size if it does go ahead. And this definitely should go to the new board because it would be unfair to hang on a new board a project that was started by a previous board, especially considering the deficient budgeting. And if in fact the overrun was considered to be covered by Eileen Scott's family, that should be in writing prior to construction starting, not just a verbal, because the person who made the offer might not be around when it comes to construction. So that's just my points on it.
Thanks, John. Jenny, and then Lisa.
Thanks. Just one other point that I wanted to add or emphasize that Michael mentioned is really about that life cycle cost for assets. And for Bamfield, because I've been working with you guys for a long time in water and in solid waste, and I see what's going on in fire, and we have parks. And so we have a very small population base and a lot of services. And so one of the objectives we want to work with the Parks Commission is really coming up with a long-term plan for the Park Service for any infrastructure and improvements that they would like to see, and look at that, not just at what the initial cost is, but what that's going to cost year over year to the taxpayer to maintain and renew, and make sure that we're looking at that in context. I don't mind looking at projects individually, but I think we really want to see them in context of what is the big picture, like how much wants to be achieved, how much is the service going to cost. And I think that this project, like, it should just get reviewed in context, and I do see that as being one of the first initiatives for the Parks Commission. So I think it would be valuable for them to look at it and then prioritize it, slot it into the work plan where it's appropriate, and then once there's a comprehensive plan that we can take back to the committee to approve, you're seeing the full picture, not just one project at a time. So I think that also provides a lot of value for long-term planning and decision-making. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Lisa.
Thanks, Bob. I just, John already touched on this, but I just wanted to say that the new covered gazebo is replacing the two original gazebos that were actually the first buildings. According to Eileen Scott, the two blue gazebos were the first buildings put up at Centennial Park. And so when they came down, they were replacing that covered area to keep us with a covered area. That was the idea. So as far as maintenance, etc. goes, as John said, we're just replacing what was. We're not necessarily adding something new.
Thanks, Lisa, for that comment. Anyone else? Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, I would agree with both those comments. It should go back to the new Parks Commission or Park Board. And I also feel like it's important for folks to understand the context too, that Centennial Park has its own income from the services that the park provides. And so the maintenance of those structures does not all fall back to the ACRD, which is important context to remember for this one.
Christine, I missed that. It doesn't fall back to where, sorry?
The maintenance isn't all on kind of ACRD and tax dollars, given the income that Centennial Park or Eileen Scott Park brings in through the services that it provides. So that the campground, the dock, the ramp all bring in an income, and part of those funds go towards operating the park.
Thank you. that being the case, if there's no other comments, questions regarding this, Michael, thank you for your report. Is there anyone prepared to make the recommended motion?
I'll do that, Bob.
Moved
I
by
recommend-
John.
Yes,
Moved by John, and I think that was seconded by Christine. Was that a seconded? Yes, I'm getting a nod. So I'll read out the motion that the Bamfield Area Services Committee refer the request to the next meeting of the Bamfield Parks Commission. And I know that Louis, being very passionate, sorry, let me get the vote on that, and then I'll speak to process for just a second. All in favor? And that looks to be unanimous with Lisa coming on board. Thank you. So I know that Louis is very passionate about this. He's put his heart and soul into it, and I want to acknowledge that. So I think it would be nice to be able to give Louis an idea of when the next Parks Commission meeting might be held. That would be very appropriate and nice if we could let Louis know about the motion and perhaps the next meeting. Let's move on to 7B, Bamfield free tipping fee pilot program. And who has the pleasure of leading this? It looks like Paulo's off. Perfect, Paulo. You go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So what we have here is, and I'll go over it just in case folks haven't had the opportunity to utilize it yet. We piloted a project several years ago for free tipping fee vouchers from Bamfield. And the idea behind that was utilizing the bins that are in the area for smaller waste and providing an opportunity for residents to bring bulkier waste, bulky furniture, reno material, those kinds of things into the Alberni Valley Sort and Go Center, formerly the Alberni Valley Landfill, free of charge. So what we did is we've been running this pilot program now for quite a number of years. And we've pulled together some statistics here, much thanks to our coordinator, Brenda Sauvé. And as you can see, we've issued out a total of 3,300 vouchers over the years since the program started. Not a lot of uptick. I'll put out right on Front Street, but we've had some usage since 2019, right up to the beginning of 2024. And quite a range of materials that we're seeing from folks from bulky waste. We're seeing construction demo. We're seeing some commercial cardboard and mixed recycling show up. A lot of gypsum for renos and things like that. And overall, it's captured a little under 22 tons over the last 4.5 years or so. As shown above in the report there, you'll see that while it is, again, it's quite small, we still see that uptick over the last couple of years as people seem to be using the program more, which was the point. And so we're recommending that because it's been running so long, we'd like to move it over to a permanent program. So what we're recommending is installing a permanent tipping fee waiver policy where we create the vouchers, we compile all that together that would be specific for Bamfield residents, and that would affect the, I believe it's approximately 225 homes in the Bamfield area there. We show just in financial consideration, total amount that we're seeing there is an approximate loss in revenue of about $3,500 over the span of the entire pilot program. But it is a good offset for direct hauling of waste by residents, as in other scenarios would reduce transportation costs or illegal dumping cleanup costs. So again, it provides that opportunity for people to take the waste where it needs to go. That's about all I have here. So I'll just kind of open up for questions, but you do have the recommendation in front of you, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Paulo. Lisa, go ahead.
I noticed on the report that don't seem to be included as waste returned, and I'm just wondering if there were vouchers for mattresses.
Say that I missed the first part, specifically around mattresses.
Yeah, is there So as a renter, I was never given any of these vouchers. So I'm not familiar with if they were specifically for your building waste or for the garbage or not. And I am curious if there were any vouchers for mattresses, because getting rid of mattresses in Bamfield can be a bit tricky.
For sure. So there are a couple of things, two parts to that. One, the vouchers themselves were for any sort of bulky waste that would include mattresses in theory, and they would have gone to the owners of these residences. That's where they would have gone. The other part is we do take mattresses in storage room at the Bamfield transfer station. We've been doing that for the last couple of years, and we work with the contractor that services our other landfills. So they will come out and pull those mattresses out of the transfer station itself. They typically come out once per year, once or twice per year to clear them out. But again, there's two options, right? So this voucher would apply for mattresses if you brought those materials in.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Christine. And
Sorry, technical difficulty. Yeah, just first, am I reading this accurately that 21 vouchers have been used in the lifespan of the program?
No, let's see. We've got approximately.
Oh, sorry, this was
total.
tons.
Yeah.
Sorry.
21, yeah, just shy of 22 tons have been removed from there. Total of, it looks like approximately 60 to 70 vouchers have been used since the program started. And that's up to even today.
Awesome. I think I'm in support of the program continuing, but am very interested in the solid waste management plan because I think this is a good program for the few folks that are using it, but I don't think that this is adequately serving the need within the community to get rid of these kinds of items. There's lots of different kinds of barriers that people face in actually connecting their waste with the landfill. For folks on the west side, which we hear about a lot, not everyone has a vessel, not everyone has the physical capabilities to get large, bulky items into a vessel, and then not everyone has an appropriate vehicle on the other side to actually take things into town. Lots of these bulky items end up here coming out, they're shipped out on the Lady Rose or via Lady Rose Marine. And yeah, so there's a bigger picture here to look at. And I think it's important that we continue that conversation and don't kind of call it done and dusted. I also had no idea that you could get rid of a mattress at the transfer station. I know that there's been some good efforts lately to improve the communication around waste services in Bamfield, and I really applaud those, but there's a little more work to do to make sure that folks are really aware of what those services are. And I think that in Bamfield's a funny little place with not that many people, but to get the word out about anything, you really need to use multiple modes of communication to make that happen effectively. And so, we have signage up and new signage coming. There is great efforts, I think, for ACRD to connect with the community through the Community Affairs Society meetings, but not everyone is going to be connecting with those places. So love to see a little more on that and some thinking too around how to assist with the renter situation too, for like Lisa's talking about. That is a big deal.
Thanks, Christine. Any other questions, comments? I will say, and I was a little tongue in cheek with my emphasis on free, but every initiative like this starts to make a difference, just as it brought some dialogue tonight. Christine, thank you for that. I'm looking at this, and we do need to celebrate certain things. And 22 tons that's going directly to the facility in port is, as Paulo pointed out, material that isn't being dumped on some back area. But Jenny and her staff do an amazing job. I see that, John. I'll get you in a second. Jenny and her staff do an amazing job, and it's not easy to solve all these problems, but we are making steps forward, and we do need to not only work harder and further with all of the community, but we also need to stop and celebrate those things that we have accomplished and are moving forward with, whether it's the new bins that are bear proof or whether it's continuing, encouraging people to take some of these bulky items into town. So with that, I am looking for someone to move the motion that the Bamfield Area Services Committee recommend the Alberta and Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approves a permanent Bamfield tipping fee voucher policy. Oh, and before we vote, John, before we vote on that, we're going to hear from John first.
So there is a motion on the floor, and I understand that. And I had a question for Paulo. Paulo, are you comfortable with the offset of this program to offset the costs of hauling it out of Bamfield in the manner we're hauling it out?
Fair question. Because the small amount of waste, I'm okay with it for now, but I do recognize being in this industry, when you open things up, there's that opportunity for even more waste to be generated. And it gets back to that bigger picture thing that Jenny was talking about earlier. When we go through the solid waste management plan update, what is that actually going to look like on a larger scale as we deal with all of the different materials that we can divert, what have you, out of Bamfield? So it's a cautionary note, I will say. It works for now. The tipping fee voucher works for now, but it still begs the question. We need to look at bigger picture, how we deal with that, because waste creeps up. That's my comment.
Okay, yeah, I just wondered what, in relationship to what we're shipping out, does it cut our costs down enough to pursue this in your mind?
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to go look back at the numbers right off the bat.
Okay.
If you wanted hard numbers, I'd have to go back and take a
I
look.
just wondered.
Right now, sorry, Jenny has.
Well, I'll pop in because I did a quick calculation here, and like when we're looking at what the tipping fee waiver is that we're losing on some of this amount, which by the way, no one gets charged tipping fees if they're dropping it off in Bamfield. So it wouldn't matter anyhow. And a ton of garbage is $140. And we're spending, I can't remember, we're up to like $80,000 in hauling costs. It is really in our best interest to have people haul to the Alberni Valley if they're willing to. Yeah. So
that's what I was after. It was, okay. Is it beneficial in the whole program? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, then you've heard the motion. Could I have someone move and second that, please? Moved by John Mass, seconded by Lisa Bai. All those in favor? And that's Bob. Are you voting for that? Sorry. And I wasn't trying to twist your arm, because if you wanted to vote against it, that would be okay too. But that was unanimous, so that passes. Thank you. We'll move on.
My vote was quick. My hand was up, but you must have missed it. It was pretty quick, but I was in favor.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Thanks very much. We're going to move on to 8A, reports. Proposed Bamfield Sewer Collection Service Report Update by Jenny Brun. Go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you. So, yeah, we did an update on this one at the last meeting. And since then, we had an open house on January 28th in person. We did tours at the wastewater plant. We did a summary of what we heard and put it on the Let's Connect page. We created 3 FAQs, again, trying to answer the questions that we get at the open houses and what we're hearing from people, what they want more information about. One of them was really about septic systems, and that's attached, and that has to do, we worked with Island Health to answer a lot of questions we were getting around that. the upcoming referendum and really what does that look like, some of the basic questions. We put a page together on that. And then there was lots of questions on like, well, what is this going to look like for me in like when I connect from an individual? So we did sort of a collection system information package as well. We did a follow-up open house on March 21st as well, which was actually really good because we had done in-person ones, and I actually thought that the virtual open house was a really good medium. I think it just works well for Bamfield. And we updated and put stuff on the Let's Connect page. And then we've established the referendum webpage on our own website, which is just a legislative requirement. So besides engagement, we also have to have it on our website. So we found out some more things in the last engagement sessions. Like when we were originally talking to the community, we really only heard that there was interest from the east side. As we've done more engagement, we've heard that there is interest from the west side. So having heard that from the community, what we're looking to do is really do 2 service establishments. So one for east side, one for west side. Because if we're going to go to the effort of doing a referendum, we do not want to leave any questions unasked and go back. So let's make sure that we're asking the questions, asking all the people. And we also didn't want to connect them because one could pass, the other could pass, they're separated, and we feel like that's what we're doing. So right now we're working on sort of fleshing out the details of what these proposed individual services would look like. We also heard at the last open house. So I think, again, one of the key insights that I got at the last virtual open house was that we were presenting information that we felt like we had already presented, but I think we had a much different attendance at that. And also it could just be a matter of like, it's finally, this project has reached enough momentum that people are finally getting interested, maybe even concerned, which makes them engage. And we don't care why you're engaging, we're just happy you are engaging. So I think that we got a lot of questions and a lot of feedback, but what we heard was that the sentiment is that there's not enough information. They're not comfortable with, no one in Bamfield is comfortable yet with the amount of information that's out there. Good to hear. So we need to do more engagement and continue to answer questions, continue to present information. So our engagement plan tentatively for the moment is we have the next virtual open house for May 6th at 6 p.m. scheduled. We will be reviewing a lot of the information to date and then sort of the questions that we think we're getting most frequently asked. That's really going to focus, and then we'll have 2 more virtual open houses, one probably early June, we're just looking at dates, and one in late June. And so we think that 3 sessions should be adequate to really get most of the questions answered, and then also just be there for people to get information. So some of the other stuff, again, we're going to review the referendum again, and we're going to review the proposed services in detail again. There's a lot of questions about what happens if someone they decide they don't want to be in the service area, they're outside of the proposed service area, but they want to come in later, or if there's a subdivision. And so we're trying to set up systems and rules that will be fair and equitable and don't disincentivize or incentivize. They're just fair and equal, depending on whether you're in or out of the service area. So that's our plan right now. Now, we are looking at a schedule of getting to a referendum in mid-September. Literally September 15th is the date. And when we're doing referendum planning, there's a lot of prescribed deadlines we have to hit. So right now we're looking, if we want to have a referendum in September, on September 15th, we will have prepared bylaws going to the board for first 3 readings by May 23rd. And once the 3 readings are done, then they go to the inspector municipalities for approval. That takes 6 weeks. If we receive that back, then we have 80 days to go and hold a referendum. So if at our next open house, or if we hear a signal that we need more time, we can delay that. But every time we delay the first 3 readings, which is fine, it will push us out for the referendum date because we just need that much lag time. So right now we're scheduling that. We're working behind the scenes in every capacity. Every single department in the ECRD is getting involved in this at this point, and there's lots of work to be done. Yeah, and we're sort of just dropped off posters and info packages about the May 6th open house, and we'll be promoting that on social media this week. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions, folks? Go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, I'll get it started. I just wanted to pass on that Community Affairs has reached out to Jenny and talked to her about soliciting questions from local residents to submit to her for feedback. And so that'll be happening. I think there's a 2-week period of time for people to submit questions. Just be forewarned, Jenny, I've submitted a lot. Surprise, surprise. In my view, I have real strong concerns about the May 23rd ACRD meeting as a target for initiating the assent process. In my view, I think there's a lot of information that still needs to be provided to the community. In particular, I have a lot of questions about the potential agreement between the ACRD and HFN as far as providing wastewater services. And I was wondering whether there's been any initial discussions with respect to that, where that's at, and what would be the timing of that? Would we have that information before an assent vote? Because I think that information is absolutely critical for, at least for me, for making a decision.
Great questions. And I do want to say a shout out to the Bamfield Community Affairs, because we really appreciate your support and in getting that engagement and in getting those questions so we can help people make that informed decision. And I think those questions are really good, Bob. And I think that do submit them and we will dive into that at the next open house and continuing on. That question has come up before, and we can provide a certain amount of certainty to that. We are working in partnership with HFN, their staff, and we have been from the beginning of the project. And so we've talked about the 4 different governance models and how we would go through it. And we agreed that, really it is a matter of the ACRD is not interested. We want to keep it as a partnership. So we don't want to take over the treatment plant. We want to keep that operating. And we can really work through that through an agreement. And we have other examples of that. But I think if there's need to see more information on that, love to hear it, and we can provide that.
Okay, and actually the more detail the better, because I think that's sort of a fundamental issue, because essentially, the wastewater service is being contracted out. And so since a third party is involved, I think we need to know what the details of that arrangement is going to be. I certainly recognize it's a bit of a chicken and egg. How much work do you put into that and formalizing agreement if you don't know if it's going to be going ahead? On the one hand, on the other hand, how do people make an informed decision if they don't know the parameters of what the proposed relationship will be? But I also just want to pass on my comment to you and the patience you've shown in dealing with these questions and the virtual open house. And I really commend you for the patience that you've shown and trying to respond to a lot of different questions from a lot of different angles from a lot of different people. One other thing I just want to mention before I sign off for this item, I would like personally, I like the virtual open houses, but I think it would be useful to have one final open house in person, recognizing that certainly is a lot of work for staff and there's the travel time, everything like that. But I think once all the information is compiled, I think it'd be an in-person meeting would be quite useful, because you have different interactions at an in-person meeting between residents and between, one-on-one with staff. And everyone can sort of get the same information and interact a lot more freely than they can online. But that's just a personal opinion.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Jenny. Anybody else? Jenny, I'm sure I didn't make a note of this when I was listening. When did you anticipate that we would have to go back or go to the board for the first bylaw readings?
Yep, we will need to do May 23rd will be our board date that we will go to in order to have a September 15th referendum.
So just help me walk through this a little bit. The 80 days, we've got a window of 80 days for the referendum. And what date would that come into effect? That's when the government signs off on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been working with Wendy on this, and so my understanding is that once we have the 3 readings, then we can send the bylaw off for the inspector. And then which, it's varying. So they've told us expect 6 weeks. It could be 4 to 6 weeks. So we're working on a 6-week estimation just for consciousness. But we have to hold the referendum within 80 days, or I believe we start over again. Like say we got it back and then we just delayed holding the referendum, then I think we have to go back and do first 3 readings again. And then we would send it to the inspector again, and so on and so forth. So.
And on the 23rd of May, is it all 3 readings that are done that day?
We have to have the 3rd reading done by the 23rd so that we can send it in the mail the next day, or virtual mail.
So the reason I've asked you to walk me through that is simply the optics of doing the bylaws as in what I see as early as May 23rd, when those community questions, if they're not answered by then, I believe that some community feedback is going to be very negative for me to handle, let alone ACRD staff.
I appreciate that input, and I appreciate that from the committee. And we're not tied to us, like there's no reason to have a September 15th referendum. We were originally hoping to go in the spring. We realized, well, that doesn't make sense. And so then when we were looking at the fall, September 15th was actually one of the earlier dates, I think, that made sense after we wanted to get away from the school startup. And so September 15th, we looked at that, we worked backwards, we came up with the May 23rd deadline. Now, if I'm hearing feedback that we want to look at a later date, say we shoot for October 15th, I think there wouldn't be a problem with like November 15th. And of course, we'd have to pick the day because we need it to be on a Saturday, but we can look at any time in the future. And if that's the direction of the services committee and you'd like us to look at that, we're very flexible. Like, I don't see any need to rush this process.
Like I said, for me, it's just the optics. I understand the mechanism, and whether it's September 15th or October 15th or November 15th, it's still moving the assent motion forward without having all the answers. I'm just sensitive to that. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, I 100% echo what you're saying there, Bob. And I also understand, Jenny, that you're working with these kind of mandated timelines. I would absolutely push it until late November at the earliest. You're right on the money, Bob. If process goes forward with the state that the local understanding is of this project, no one's going to feel good about it, and you're just going to come up with a no. And so, I would also, in terms of communicating with the community, it's very difficult to engage with this largely tourism focused community in the summer months. And so, that might also create, we just need to be aware of that if things are coming out midsummer, that folks' attentions will be elsewhere. But really at this point in the year, there's a few months of good time to consult while you're only battling spring fever. And then once summer hits, like no one's paying attention. They're all either having a nice summer off or making their living for the year.
I just wanted to share, I want Jenny and staff to know, I recognize that the longer this process goes, the more staff time is being applied to this when you're already busy. I acknowledge that. I want to make sure we give this the best shot possible, regardless of the outcome. Vote yay, vote nay. I just want to make sure that that especially, and last night I spoke to it on community affairs, is our community is about to, we're in the midst of sewer discussions. We're now looking at the Bamfield, planning discussions and process, looking at OCP and Hawaiian with their wonderful vision. We got to make sure that we've got that confidence in the community, that everyone is being heard and we're responding to it, so that at the end of the day, those decisions, we can support the decision. Not everyone may be happy with an outcome, but we want to make sure we've got that due process. So, there is no motion coming out of this other than to receive that report, unless there's some recommendation. Jenny, I see you're about to jump in. Go ahead. Help me out here.
I was just going to say, like, you can not make a motion if you want, but if the committee does want to, like, I'm hearing the voice of the committee, and perhaps it is worth, like, the report does say that we're shooting for a referendum in mid-September. If the committee would like to provide direction to staff to adjust that time frame, you can create a motion, and then that provides very clear direction. So that is an option if you would like.
So we've heard from Christine, where I know that it doesn't really impact or affect you. I don't know if you have any thoughts, but I with all due respect to the board or the committee, I would like to just very quickly, if you don't mind, just go through everyone and see what their thoughts are, please. And we'll start with Moira. Any thoughts, Moira, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you said, obviously this isn't something that is greatly affecting our region, but I am very much in the view with everyone being so close, and especially with it being water and our very heartfelt principal Hishokasawak, that particularly doesn't matter in the sense that that doesn't lessen the importance to Uchuckalsit and what that means. I'm in full agreement with Christine and yourself, where I believe that taking a little bit of extra time while still understanding that that does add more to staff's plate will make the community as a whole feel much better about those kinds of things. And I know I, as myself, if I was a community member, would feel that my leadership is taking in all considerations and is not just willy-nilly making decisions based off of what they think is good, but they are taking that time to think about what everybody wants, and they're viewing it as what's good for the goose and the gander and not just for one small group. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Lisa, John, and Bob, please, and Christine last. Then we've actually heard Christine, so we'll go with Lisa, John, and Bob, please.
Thanks, Bob. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I agree with both you, with all three of you beforehand. I feel that the due process, Bamfielders really are going to feel that they were heard, and they need that extra time. I think May is too soon.
You, John?
I don't agree 100%. I feel that May is okay. A target of the 15th of September, I'm comfortable with that. If you want to move it to the 15th of October or whatever the Saturday is, I'd be okay with that as well. If I know, having spoke to many people in the community about it, that the farther away it is, the less important it is. And it's partly because of it's getting closer, that people have, although it's been formal now for almost 2 years, people have not taken the time to learn. And they have not taken the time to go get the information themselves or come to one of these meetings. The open houses show the numbers of people that have come to them on such a really important vote. It shows how little information, and a lot of people that I've talked to have simply said, oh yeah, I'm in favor or I'm not in favor, and that's all there is to it. They're not even looking for more information. So I am very concerned about going too far into the future. because I expect that given 3 months difference, we'll be in exactly the same place in 3 months because if it comes off. So if we set a date, make it public, and then people have a time that they have got to get the information and they know it's coming. Up till now, it's mostly it was fall, but it wasn't the date. So I think setting a date, and then obviously we have to work backwards on the timeline. So I'm okay with the May because it still gives us quite a bit of time. And I really appreciate the fact, Jenny, that the way this has been set out on the site, on the Let's Connect, with the chronological order, with all of the information, pretty much everything that's happened to date, with all the information surrounding it is there. If somebody wants to take the time to learn without having to have someone repeat everything to them, it's all there, and I really appreciate that.
All good points, John. And that's why we have a committee, and that's why everyone's voices are important. And I will echo the fact that Jenny and team and the consultant have been working. I can't believe the effort to get the information in and out. And I have to remind myself that some folks that have a strong opinion aren't necessarily right either. But Bob, you've got the final word, so we're looking for your sage advice here to help us move forward.
Well, I agree 100%, Bob. I don't think the optics are good at all. Having council or the board approve proceeding with the assent vote when you've got, 3 or 4 more open houses to going ahead. I think that looks really bad, and I think it locks you into a date. I think at some point in time we have to be locked into a date. But to be honest, I've been to the open houses. Jenny knows I've asked a lot of questions, and I've read all material, and I still have a ton of questions. So I think there's got to be a lot more information coming in order for people to make informed decision. You're right. Some people won't take that opportunity, but I think you've got to give people that opportunity. And I'd be prepared to make some kind of a motion recommending that the assent vote does not go to the board for their approval of the bylaw until after summer. And also, we're going to have 2 months lost at summer. So unfortunately, I get John's comment that you can keep putting it off, but we're going to have 2 months lost during the summer with summer vacation. And so you have to give people an opportunity to get their heads back in the game and have time for it to go through the process in the fall. So I would much rather see a vote later in the fall. I think you're muted, Bob.
You're muted.
Thank you all. This has been an amazing discussion. I might look to you, Bob, in just a moment for that motion. But in fairness to those who have been working like crazy on this, Jenny, your thoughts on what you've just heard. And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all. I value your sage advice as well.
Well, it is really hard because from our perspective, we really just need to get to a place on where we can have people making an informed decision. And so we've been trying to be very flexible. I just would hate to see a referendum go forward and there be regrets or, wish we would have, could have. So I think that it's fair to push it out from September, since there seems to be a feeling that that's not adequate time. I would like to pick a date or keep it on the work plan that we do the referendum by the end of the year. I think mid-November would be the absolute latest that I would be comfortable, because I don't want people forgetting or getting complacent. And so even if we did October, then again, we would be somewhere around late June. I don't know the exact date where we could do the bylaw reading at the board. So that would be after 2 or 3 of the open houses. And the bylaws themselves are really very simplistic, right? It's the information that we're engaging and talking to the public about is much more detailed, but still, I think it's all very fair feedback. So we could look at pushing that. So I think it'd be best if we look at sort of the end date. So if you're going to provide a recommendation, do it for the referendum date, and then we will go figure out the details to work backwards.
Thank you. That's good advice. So, Robert, what are your thoughts as far as making a motion?
Well, I'm not good at numbers counting back 80 days, but maybe I'd be prepared to set forth a motion that we target the assent vote prior to the end of the year, and targets the bylaws going to the ACRD board in the fall. I don't know if that's too vague, or if anybody wants to add to that or amend it, feel free, but that's sort of where I'm at.
Bob, the 16th. Oh,
Go ahead.
Bob Schmidt, the 16th of November is on a Saturday. Do we want a motion for that to be the referendum day? It sounds like a more workable time for ACRD staff.
Yeah, what would going back 80 days, when would that be initiated at the ACRD board? Because I think I would personally, I'd like to see it go to the ACRD board, and after you've had that last open house in late August or early September. I don't have a calendar in front of me to start doing that.
We can adjust the date of that last open house to work around the 80 days. I think it'll be, and I understand where you're coming from, is you want to have all of the public engagement prior to that. One of the reasons we picked another open house is that even if we do push this, we'll probably still do some communication and education after the bylaws gone out, just to remind people of what they're voting on and be available to answer those questions even between those two time frames. So once it goes to the board, I don't see us like completely not talking about it. We'll still answer the same questions again and again. But we can make sure that we're doing, because we'll be adding a lot of engagement now if we push the date as well. And we might relook at the spring series that we've set up, because we were doing intensive engagement in order to meet our timeline. So it's sorry to be vague about that, but like I don't mind doing the shift, but I think we would come back and look at what an engagement plan looks like if we were going to shift the referendum date and get you details on that, if that's okay.
Okay. So do you want to where do you want to proceed then, Jenny? Do you want me to throw out a date, or would you prefer to?
Yeah, I think if you can just the targeting for the referendum date, and then leave it with us, we'll go back and figure out the details and the plan that'll get us to that new date. Because it's easier for us to work backwards once we've got a date that we're aiming for.
Okay. Before you come up with that date, Bob, I want to go to Myra, who's got her hands up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pop in the, just for the math on that November 15th date, 80 days prior to that would be landing us on Tuesday, August 27th.
Okay, thank you. So Bob, your thoughts then? Oh, sorry, Heather, you jumped in.
I was just going to say that we also need, before the 80 days starts, we also need the time for the province to review the bylaw. So that's at least 6 weeks. So I just did some quick math, and there's board meeting June 26th, Jenny, and there's also a board meeting in July. It's actually late July. I think it's the 24th. There's also the option of calling a special board meeting for this particular item if those dates don't work.
So before we go to Bob, and I'm just thinking again of myself having to justify, because at the end of the day, a lot of fingers get pointed my way. I think if we have it later in the fall, and I'm going to be looking to you, Bob, for that date. If we have it later in the fall, I can live with going to the board, whether it's late June or July, and say, look, we have an end date in mind. There's lots of time now. It gives, I hope, some confidence to the community that we've done our due diligence, but we do have a process that we have to follow. So I think it's a compromise all around. So with that being stated, Bob, do you have a date in mind, a month in mind, and a date in mind?
Yeah, in light of all that, I think whether it's November 15th or the 16th, I don't know. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Would the preference be for a Saturday? Was that the idea? Was November 16th a Saturday? Would that be the target? Okay. Well,
It,
then
it has to be a Saturday, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, November 16th. I might just suggest to say mid-November, and then Jenny and I can do some math to refine that a little further.
Okay, that works for me. And then working back, I think we can get all the open houses in June. We may not have the last open house, but at least I think the bulk of the public engagement would be done by the time this goes to the ACRD. So I think the optics are right that way, and still give us a lot of time for people to learn. But so that's what I would move is mid-November for the target date for the assent vote.
So Jenny, again, great conversations, everybody. So Jenny, Bob makes a motion that we would have the assent vote mid-November. That motion, does that motion go to the ACRD board, or is that simply a committee motion that staff will act on?
Actually, Heather could correct me on this because Wendy was always like the committee only ever recommends that the board does stuff. It only is delegated authority. However, the committee can like specify its will in writing, which doesn't necessarily require it go to the board. And we've had that happen in the past as well. And so I think the committee could pass a resolution, and I'll let Heather jump in, that they would request that the referendum date be set for sometime in mid-November. And I don't think that would be out of place. Would that be correct, Heather?
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm good with making that motion.
And do I have a seconder for that motion? Christine seconds that motion. All in favor? And because Christine made the motion, I'm assuming that, or seconded that, I'm assuming she voted for that, so that's unanimous. Thanks, guys. That good conversations. And Jenny, please pass on my thanks to staff for your patience and indulgence in moving this forward. As I said, we want the best outcome we can get for the community. So let's go on to item 8B, Bamfield Water Systems. And Eddie, it's going to be good to hear from you, sir.
I know. Thank you, Director. It's been a long time waiting, and that was some good conversation. So I did really enjoy that last little bit. So I'm just here to speak to the 2023 annual report for the Bamfield Water System. The annual report is created for the residents and then submitted annually to VHA. This provides an update on the annual performance of the water system, especially relating to the mission, which is providing potable, cost-effective, and reliable water for the residents. The Bamfield water system continues to meet all water quality targets, including no total coliforms in any water samples, healthy chlorine residual throughout the system, good turbidity levels, and then meeting all parameters of the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines. So that continues to be strong and has been strong since the water treatment plant came on board. 2023 saw an average daily demand of 199 cubic meters per day, which was down from 207 cubic meters per day in 2022. And the peak demand was 239 cubic meters during the summer, which provided that 1.21 peak demand ratio, which was under our target there. The cost per customer was also under the target amount of $1,500 at $1,116. And then we come down to the three items where we didn't hit our targets. However, we did see improvements from the year before. So we talk about continuous improvement and always striving to get better than the year before. We did that in contribution to capital per parcel. We were at $399 in 2023 as compared to $194 in 2022. The number of breaks went down from 25 in 2022 to 9 in 2023, and this could be either main or service breaks. And then I think the big one to touch on here is our unaccounted for water loss. So we were at 17% of unaccounted for water loss in the system. 2022, we were at 25%. Back in 2019, we were at 32%. So we've almost cut that in half in 4 years. And that's very important because the cost of producing water, potable water, is increasing every single year. Whether it's for the treatment supplies themselves, the freight for the treatment supplies, electricity, increasing pump and all costs, everything is increasing when it comes to making water. So to see that number drop down so significantly is very good news. We can speak a little bit to of course, to the number of service and main breaks decreasing. We can also speak to the job that Les did there in the community, being on top of leaks and monitoring the system as well as he did. I'm just going to move through, and I'm not going to get into too much detail through everything. We'll open it up to questions after. And I'm going to touch now a little bit on upcoming projects for 2024. And then the big news we received in 2023, of course, was the confirmation of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant, the ICIP grant, for the replacement of the West Bamfield submarine line. We submitted this application in February of 2022, and it was confirmed in late 2023 officially that we received the grant, which comes in at 73.3% of the total project cost, which was estimated in February to be at $1.175 million. So the total grant amount is $861,000 and change. So very significant. So where we're at now in 2024, we're moving forward with that project. It is the most important infrastructure replacement and renewal project within the system. We have, as of today, we signed the contract for the engineering design and contract information administration with Great Pacific Consulting, who's an engineering and environmental management consulting firm from Victoria. They have experience in similar projects. They completed a submarine line replacement in Sunshine Coast, and then did some work in the Bamfield sanitary marine outfall project. So they do have a good knowledge of Bamfield and the inlet. Coors Engineering, who actually holds the water model analysis for the Bamfield water system, is a subcontractor on the project, so that additional knowledge of the system will be extremely valuable. I'm just going to take a drink of water. Okay. An interesting thing we're doing in this project as well is we're bringing on a contractor at the 50% design stage, which will help provide added value to the rest of the project to make sure that the design engineering is coming in at a suitable cost, that there are innovations involved in the project, and that's a new process for the ACRD as far as these tenders. We can then select that construction contractor to continue with the construction work if we're happy with what was provided during the design process. And the pricing, of course, for the construction services is appropriate, or we can go back out to tender for the second phase. The schedule to complete the design, we're hoping to get that design completed by midsummer, and at which point then they'd start submitting permits to start the actual construction of the project. So that's when we look at big projects for 2024, that's definitely number one. It'll allow us to move forward and identify and look to what's next as far as replacement within the system. And will definitely provide a little bit more reliability. We now have 9 repairs on that submarine line. So it is definitely the number one replacement project within the system. A couple other projects, both reservoirs within the system will be inspected and cleaned. So we'll have a remote operating vehicle that'll go in, it'll inspect the reservoirs, look at what the condition is, both inside and outside. And then they will be cleaned again with that remote vehicle. The reservoirs will remain online while doing so, so we won't see any stoppages in service or interruptions. And then our finance team is leading a long-term financial strategy as well. So this will be looking at the necessary costs within the next 10 to 20 years, the capital replacement costs and ways to address the current funding gap between the money being contributed to the reserves and then what is needed moving forward. So that's just some of the items that we'll be looking at, and I will open it up now to any questions.
Thank you, Eddie. Any questions? Go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, rather than a question, more of an observation. Admittedly, I'm a bit of a municipal government nerd, but I found this really fascinating, to be quite honest. I thought it's a very useful tool for the residents to have to confirm that their water utility is being well managed. I particularly like the idea that you had goals and targets and whether you met them or not, and how to adjust if they weren't met. And I think people should be aware of the funding gap. That's something that all municipalities seem to be facing, that there's an infrastructure gaps, especially replacing old water and sewer lines and other infrastructure over time. And when people have their water rates increase, at least there's, a justification for that. They may not like it, but at least there's a reason for it. So I think this is a good thing to get out to the public. I don't know what the conduit is getting it to the average person or how many people will actually want to read it, but I think it's just useful information for people to have, and for such a fundamental and critical service to know that it's being well managed, and it's trying to improve, and it's trying to deal with future issues as over and above, maintaining, good clean water for people to drink. So I kudos to you and the ACRD for providing that.
Thanks, Bob, for those comments. And, to follow up on that, as I alluded to earlier on this evening, I like good news stories, and we don't share enough of that, especially, staff and directors, because, we're always dealing with putting out fires, so to speak. But I think the whole report, being 10 pages in length, it's not going to be read. If we had something concise, water systems for dummies, and I'm not suggesting, I'm talking about myself now, something that is concise, that speaks to those highlights, those bullet points. I did see Jenny's smile when Bob acknowledged the funding gap, because that's all about the asset management stuff that we've been doing for a few years now. And, that reality, for our communities. But the funding stuff aside, I think we do need, a one-pager bullet that we can share with Bamfield Community Affairs, because that does go out in minutes to the community. And we celebrate some good news in our community, whether it's the grant for the submarine line or the quality of water. And again, good job, staff. Thank you for your comments, Bob. Any other questions or comments on that report? If that's being the case, I would like someone to move the motion that the Bamfield Area Services Committee receives reports A and B. Moved by Bob Schmidt, seconded by John Mass. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much. Under late business 9A, we do have an item, and that is changing the meeting date. Heather, would you like to talk to that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I've had a request from one committee member who will not be around in July. When we were wondering if there'd be feasibility of changing that date for the next committee meeting from July 16th to either before that or after that, potentially August. Yeah, so looking for feedback. It works from staff's perspective to change it, and I know Director Beckett is fine with changing it as well. So looking for some feedback.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I don't mind being the anonymous board member or committee member that suggested that. And my apologies, I thought about raising that at the first meeting because it just kind of hit home, that's kind of prime vacation time. And then I went to the step of actually, in the interests of marital bliss, agreeing to go on a vacation in July. So totally self-serving. I think summers can be problematic, but I just suggested that I would like to have another day, but if that works out better for people and people have, plans in August and don't want to give up July, that meeting's been scheduled. I'm fine with that, but my preference would be to somehow move it out of the summer if possible, but I'll go with whatever works for the rest of the committee.
I have a question for Heather. What, without looking at the bylaw, trying to dig that up off the side of my other computer, what is a quorum number for this committee?
So there is 7, so we need 4.
Okay. I'm just not sure that in July, August, we're going to get a full slate, but I am a little bit, based on our agenda tonight and the important work that we're doing and the conversations. I think we should still go ahead with a summer meeting, recognizing we may not have everyone. That's just my opinion. Any other thoughts, committee members?
I'm
Christine?
happy to proceed with a summer meeting and to choose another date in July. I think it's also would be useful to think about it in relation to our big item that we were just talking about, and if there's any point when it's going to be good for us to have the group together to have discussion before the wastewater piece goes forward. It'd be useful to know that timeline, but
based on that, Christine, really good thoughts. I'm wondering, Jenny, if between you and Heather and myself, we could take a look at that, and then what do they call it? A doodle pool, or what do they call that?
A
And
doodle poll.
yeah, and then we put that out based on some of those key dates and things that may be happening, and pick a date and move forward with that.
Sure, that sounds good. If the committee is open to that, Jenny and I could discuss some potential dates later on.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion for that. Just some nods of heads would, yeah, perfect. Okay, let's do that then. Thank you. So under number 10, question period, do we have, Heather, any questions from the hordes of folks that were watching this evening?
So we don't have any attendees on Zoom, so there's no questions there. And just give me a second to check my email.
Okay.
And there's no questions received by email.
Okie dokie then. Nothing in camera to report out on. So a motion to adjourn, please.
Oh, hang on a sec, Bob.
Oh.
Under 11, we actually do have an in-camera agenda.
Oh, sorry, you're absolutely right. Okay. So do I have to, let's see.
So if you read out the reasons that we're going to go in camera, and then we could have a motion and a seconder.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'm just anxious to get to the Canucks game. I'm only kidding. So item number 11, in camera, motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter, sections I-90.1A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. So can I have that moved by Moira and seconded by Lisa? All in favor to go in camera? Motion approved. Thank you very much.